because reading about it in a book in the rule book is completely different than seeing it run at a test. Hey guys, Kat here from Standing Stone Kennels, and we are here for another podcast on our new Standing Stone podcast. If you've followed along with our podcast journey, you may have heard of our YAWA podcast, which stood for You Ask, We Answer, and that was the beginning of this journey of podcasting. It started out as just answering people's questions and has evolved to so much more. Ethan and I are still going to be on the podcast together at times, answering people's questions for sure, and having discussions between ourselves on dog training, hunting, whatever we want to chat about. But we've also decided we want to invite some guests onto our show, talk to them about things that we think that are very interesting and beneficial to share with all of you. So if this is your first time tuning into our podcast, thank you for listening. I invite you to check out our other social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube channel that's dedicated to dog training videos. And then we also have a new YouTube channel that's going to be dedicated to these podcasts so that you can watch us talk. And if you don't know, we also have a Patreon community. It's patreon.com/standingstonekennels. And it's an online dog training community where if you have questions about dog training, how to get your dog from point A to point Z, we can help you on that platform as well. And last but not least, we do have our online store, standingstonesupply.com, which is full of things for training and hunting that we actually use and recommend. It's not full of a bunch of junk that doesn't work. It's all stuff that we have put through the test of training lots and lots of dogs and hunting behind them as well. So on today's episode, I want to introduce you to Annie Nuss, who I've known for a very long time, since almost the beginning of our kennel business, which has been about 10 years now. Annie and Charles got a puppy from us, Trigger, little Miss Trigger, and she is getting a little gray in the face now because it's been a while. And we've trained dogs together and have some really great memories and stories that we could share about Brewster, Nebraska. Maybe we'll get into some of those tonight. You never know. But we've also had a lot of NAVHDA experiences together where we've been at events, trained together. We've hunted together and froze our butts off in North Dakota over still one of the most fun Thanksgivings I have ever had. We spent time together with my family, hunting behind some dogs, using hot hands to stay warm, and then letting Charles and Ethan take the rest of the hunting, and we went back to the house because it was just beyond cold. And it is a crazy small world because we both actually originally are from North Dakota, which maybe not a lot of you know, but we never knew each other in North Dakota. But we still have lots of things that we talk about, North Dakota nachos being one of them.
Yep.
So I have told you a little backstory about how I know Annie, but I would like her to introduce her to you as well, and tell a few more details about herself, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty about what this episode is all about, the behind the scenes of NAVHDA.
All right. Like Kat said, my name's Annie Nuss. Charles and I have Honor Point Kennels. We got involved with Shorthairs through Kat and Ethan. She mentioned Trigger. She will be 9 this year, so she definitely has the gray eyebrows kicking in, and she's our kind of oldest dog. We have 6 total Shorthairs, so the first 3 are from Standing Stones from Kat and Ethan. So throughout the years, we definitely, have gotten our dogs to them. We've trained with them. We've done some breedings with them. They were kind of our mentors when we did some breedings on our own. Definitely, Charles hunts behind the dogs more than I do. I'm what you would consider a fair weather hunter. I think that's kind of what happened in North Dakota that Thanksgiving with Kat. We were the first to volunteer to be the blockers, so we didn't have to walk in the cold, and that's when the hot hands came in handy. And kind of with that, with all of the dogs and getting involved with the short hairs through Kat and Ethan, that's how we kind of got introduced to NAVHDA and started running our dogs in it. And really, it's been one of those things that we haven't really looked back. So we're kind of all in with our dogs, with volunteering, kind of doing everything that we do. Other than that, that's pretty much sums up everything in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and you started that great, because you said what started getting you into NAVHDA was getting short hairs and wanting to do something with them. Not only Charles, who's done the training and the hunting behind the short hairs, but you have actually trained and prepared puppies and dogs to run through the NAVHDA test as well. You're just not a bystander. And when you and Charles commit to something, you guys really go all in. It's not just him doing stuff. It's not just you doing stuff. It's a joint effort. And you guys are both very involved in NAVHDA. I'd like you to share a little bit about what your first experience of running a puppy through NAVHDA was, because I do know this initial story as well.
So me personally running the first puppy, is that the Timber story? So Timber was our second short hair, and we kind of decided, I think, we watched Charles kind of ran Trigger through her first test. We learned a lot from that particular set of events that happened there. But so, we were doing training, and I had Timber, and I think she was like 4.5 months old. She was fairly young. So we're like, well, she's doing everything she needs to do. I'll go ahead and I handle her. And of course, she's doing everything fine. It comes the day of the test, and it's pouring down rain, and kind of in my back pocket, I had, I know that I can get her back to me in the field because she loves water. And so I banked on that. But then the day of the test, it was raining, and she didn't need water from me. She got plenty of that in the field. So I felt like she did terrible, right? Like she just didn't do well. And I came out of the field, and I had, Timber next to me, and I get past the whole gallery, and Charles is like, well, how'd it go? And I was like, and I waited, and then I just busted out in tears, and I was bawling, and it was terrible. She wouldn't listen to me. I just thought it was, the worst thing ever in the whole entire world. It was my first test. I was nervous. I had it in my head how it was going to go, which this happens a lot for people who run their puppies. You think they train perfectly, the day of tests, they're going to do exactly what they've done, and they prove us wrong a lot of the times. The rest of the test was fine, and I think she ended up getting a prize, I believe 3. It was fine. But I ended up running her less than a month later, and we got a prize 1. I forgot who Ethan ran, but we ran in Missouri because he ran a pup at the same time.
It kind of blends together. I honestly can't remember.
It does. So, but I know, that day of the test, I had some few other tricks up in the field. I think she had just gotten back from maybe Michigan when Charles and Ethan had gone up hunting. And so the field that we were at in Missouri, there was some timber. So she actually wanted to go because she'd been used to hunting in the timber.
That's not appropriate
so I was super
at all.
Nervous about
with
that.
Being timber and the timber in the field.
Exactly. Not appropriate at all. So I actually on the fly just, I was worried about her recall and coming back to me because she has the drive and she loves the birds. And, so she was out there trying to find the birds. She was pointing them. Everything was fine. And I remember thinking, I got to get her attention somehow. So I crouched down and I took my hat off and I was waving it around. I kind of flipped it up, and then she saw it and came to run to it because she thought, oh, I'm going to grab this hat and go. And right when she came to me, I kind of grabbed her, and the judge was like, yeah, you can leash her up. And they were like, that was a really good trick. I'm like, I don't know where it came from, but it worked. So, in that test, also on her track, on her second test, she tracked that pheasant. I was probably gone 45 minutes following timber that was tracking this pheasant. They actually started the track behind me because I was so far gone trying to find her. So my first two, times running were both timber, and I had some interesting things pop up both times. So
that allows you to gain a ton of experience in just 2 short tests. And I think that a lot of people going into their first NAVHDA natural ability test are very much in the same shoes that you were with timber. I know I was with my first puppy, Nix, that I ran at 5 months old. You run these young puppies with a little bit of exposure, not a ton of training under the belts because they're young. They've barely had some collar conditioning, maybe, and they are out there doing what they have been naturally bred to do with a little bit of exposure, and it's all on them. I mean, we can be along for the ride, hope for a little bit of cooperation, but it's mostly about the puppy and how they're going to perform. And you think you've got it all figured out, and you've got these tricks up your sleeve that's going to work for you that day, and then it rains. It was raining at Nix's test as well for his first puppy test, and we did the water first and then the field later. And I was like, oh man, it's raining. What if he doesn't want to get in the water? I had no idea if he would want to swim while he was already wet or what. And he's...
Yeah. Did we train when it was raining? Like, they're puppies. You don't want to scare them from water. As they get older and the more advanced testing, you do all of that stuff no matter what the weather. But puppies are like, well, no, I don't want to, burn them on the water, so we're not going to go out while it's raining. It's just a silly thing that you think of that you don't think could impact a dog, but usually, if they got high enough drive that they're going to go in the water no matter what.
He did, and obviously Timber did as well at her rainy day test. But that's things that you don't necessarily think about or prepare for, or you think you're going to be able to use water to get them back for that nice cooperative recall, and then they are like, I'm drenched and I'm really not that hot and thirsty, so I don't need that water. The hat little trick is a great one. Don't waste it. Use it when you need it. But those puppies are prey-driven animals. They want to come in when they and see what that movement is all about. And you can use that once in a while when you really need to, if you need to get that puppy back. Because the test isn't about any obedience at that point, the natural ability test. It's all about cooperation, and to be able to have a few tricks up your sleeve isn't a bad thing. And getting down on yourself and being unsure of how she truly did because you don't know. You're not a judge. You hadn't been to any handlers clinics. Really, you don't know what to expect. So don't ever think your dog is down and out because she did, prize that day. So
she did prize, and it was fine. It was just more, the combination of nerves and not really knowing. So, going back to even trigger, Charles and I were just talking about this. We, through you guys, we're like, we'd really like you to run a natural ability. We're like, okay. And like you said, with us, we typically are all in. Like, we don't half anything. We're all in. So, trigger, we got her entered in her first test, and we actually never joined, we weren't part of a chapter before because we didn't know enough about it. We did everything on our own. She was the dog that took 25 pigeons to start to point. So she absorbed a lot of our training mistakes being our first dog, which I think a lot of people that have multiple dogs can understand where we're coming from there. But and then in her second test, she ended up, I think she got a 3 also because it was her track, which it's just something if you don't know much about it and you don't participate, you think, oh man, I don't know where I'm at. And so, we ended up rerunning Trigger as well, I think the following spring. And she ended up getting a prize 1, but it was after we didn't do well on the first test, we started going to training days at a chapter. And that's where it really kind of clicked for us. There's all these people and all these tools and all these resources and all of this knowledge in one spot that we really should be taking advantage of that. And then it was basically, downhill from there with the multiple different chapters
mean-
that we've been involved with, you know, in the past
You don't mean downhill.
8 years.
You mean what do you
well,
mean?
uphill. I mean,
Whatever.
well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, guess uphill. I guess
been great,
you'd say.
right?
I mean, it's been
There
a
we
roller
go.
coaster
I think
ride.
a roller coaster ride is
It's been
appropriate.
great.
And the
Yeah,
thing,
it's not-
the thing that you mentioned, and
Yeah.
I want to hit on is, so Trigger was your guys' first short hair. She's 9. Nix was our first short hair that we ran through the NAVHDA system, other than our first dog shooter, which he unfortunately passed away. And he's 10. So back 9-10 years ago, the amount of resources that were truly available for people that were interested in gaining some experience with NAVHDA, I think were fewer and further between. There were some local chapters. Kansas at the time did not have a chapter. So we did not have a chapter.
Yeah.
Nebraska and Colorado would have been our closest chapters, which were very far away at the time. YouTube channels and training information wasn't really readily available. So we were all learning. As breeders, we wanted to have our puppy buyers get involved with something that could help them train their puppies, which we felt NAVHDA was a great venue for that, a great avenue to meet like-minded people that were also invested in training, that had some potential experience to offer newbies that were learning. And it kind of gave people that little bit of a push to work with their puppies at a younger age instead of waiting until they were 2, past the point of running through natural ability, which is 16 months. And then you've got a 2-year-old wild short hair that you haven't done anything with, and you're at your wit's end. So that's why we really wanted our puppy buyers to look into their local NAVHDA chapters, to consider running them, because it's a really great opportunity for people to become involved with like-minded people, learn about training, and work with their puppies. So as far as your local chapters now that you're involved in, like you guys said, you're all in. When you made a commitment to something, you're all in. So you're not involved with just one chapter. You're involved with multiple chapters, from memberships and training days and testing and everything, all the hats that you guys wear.
Yep. We wear lots of different hats. So we are active members of the Hawkeye chapter, which is the closest chapter to us. It's about 45 minutes away, around the Grinnell, Iowa area. And then also active members in the Heartland chapter, which is in Nebraska, just kind of northwestish of Lincoln, Nebraska. So that's like a 3-hour and 15-minute drive for us. So we're active in going to those training weekends. We have some weekends, wasn't this past weekend, actually it was, Heartland's training day was on Saturday, and then Hawkeye's training day was on Sunday. So I actually stayed home that weekend, and Charles drove over and he trained on Saturday, and then he drove home, and then he got up, and then I wasn't feeling the greatest, so I stayed back, but then he also then went to Hawkeye on Sunday. So it was, a whole weekend basically driving all over the place to help, not only, we have dogs that we're actively training. We have Mako, who's training for the Invitational this year. But also, Charles is the vice president of the Heartland chapter. I've been the test secretary there before. I've been the volunteer coordinator there, multiple different roles for Hawkeye as well. But so we like to go there because we, like you said, you meet like-minded people. Over the years, we've become friends with many people, just amazing friendships that we've had. And a lot of people are in the same boat. They may not know what they're doing, and throughout the course of the years we've gained all this experience and knowledge, and we just want to help as many people as we can. So showing up to those training days and helping people who, there's other people who are also qualified for the Invitational, and that's super high level test. So I think it's just important to get out there and kind of help everyone do that. I mean, and we've also we've showed up at other Iowa's closer to us. We're not active members there, but we've gone there before for training. Charles has kind of helped talk with some of the members of the New Kansas chapter that's closest to you guys. So I'm sure eventually we'll be members of them, because the more involvement you have, you just have just such a wide variety of knowledge. You learn something new from people kind of everywhere you go. And we just like to kind of soak all up, everything that we can, soak it all up, and then, help people where we can too. So yeah, we're involved in lots of chapters. And, with Charles also being a judge, we get asked to come, to chapters in Minnesota or Wisconsin, come to their training days or seminars, or he may judge and then we may go, up there as well. So definitely get pulled in all sorts of directions, but we wouldn't have it any other way.
And what you said is very, very good point. So you're involved in all these different chapters, whether you're paying members or are going for other training days, helping volunteer. Charles, being a judge, may go up early for a test, get an opportunity to train on grounds with his dogs, judge the test, and then head home. And you may be able to tag along if you've got enough time off from work or not. But that gives those dogs, your dogs, such a great advantage, I would say, because they get to see so many different testing sites and different water when it comes to duck search water and water that you can prep for the invitational on. And if you've got young puppies, multiple options for water intros and water entries is not a bad idea. You got a puppy that is, pretty confident about entering your backyard pond or your local chapter's water, and come test day, they have to throw a curveball because this pond is closed because of blue-green algae, or this pond got flooded and we can't use it. So something changes. And if you've got a puppy that is only used to one water entry, they may balk at a little bit different level of entry, grade of entry where it drops off faster. So having opportunities where you're traveling to different training days, having access to different training grounds is really beneficial, from the natural ability level all the way up to that invitational level.
Yeah.
As well as when you are, go.
No, I was going to say, it's definitely, we've been to enough tests where we've seen dogs that are definitely, you can tell, used to the gradual, sandy beach into the water. And then you throw in, well, this time now we have to do it off of a boat ramp at a public access lake. And so the concrete throws them off, or the rocks, if it's a rocky area, that throws them off. Or even, they try to get a gradual entrance into the water, but sometimes it's just not possible. It may be, it drops off a lot faster than the puppies are used to. So, and while,
because you just got a ton of rain.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't control the weather.
No, you can't. And it's, not everyone can get and experience all of those things, and that's understandable, but trying to give your dogs as much exposure to as many things as you can, I think, is very important.
And the resource of the people. Now keep in mind, and take this with a grain of salt, everyone that attends chapter training days is not an expert, is not a professional. Everyone has an opinion on how to train a dog, because everyone there has either trained a dog or has a dog most of the time, and they may have found something that worked for that puppy, but it may not work for yours. But they have experience and they have knowledge, and you can take that and apply it and adapt it and shape it and mold it for what works for you, what works for your dogs, and where you're at in your training journey. It allows you, when you are prepping for that invitational, to have the potential of other steady brace mates to work with. If you need backing opportunities and you guys own short hairs, well, maybe you need to see what a Munsterlander on point looks like, or not you, but Mako, or whatever needs an opportunity to point, and work with another breed so that they're as prepared as possible. And those other people that are also preparing for that level of testing, that are at those training days, appreciate you guys being there as well for the brace mates and for the experience that you guys have going to the invitational, knowing how some of those events are set up. Because I know my first time going to the invitational with Nix, I was lucky enough to go the year before and just observe and just watch how some of the test was run, because reading about it in a book in the rule book is completely different than seeing it run at a test. So having those opportunities to go to training days, even if you're not running a dog, go to a local test and watch how the natural ability test is run. You get to see a lot from the gallery. Watch how the utility test is run. You can even ask to walk along at times. And if the judges are okay and the handler is okay with it, you get a little bit closer look at what's actually happening in the field from an experience standpoint. And I know that I wouldn't say makes you not nervous the day of the test, but it makes you feel a little more confident about what to expect from the test itself. Not necessarily what to expect from your dog, though.
Yeah, that could change the tune very quick. I mean, and that's something that we, try to prep people for. A lot of people only train, maybe with themselves or just a few other people. But come the day of the test, whether it's, natural ability, you're going to have at least three judges in the field with you, possibly two other apprentices, if they have any apprentices. In the beginning, you're going to have someone that's going to be walking, that's going to be, testing for, shooting the blank for the gun. So you see sometimes puppies that are kind of like, whoa, what's with all these people? So we definitely encourage people, even if, like Kat said, even if you don't have a dog that you're necessarily testing, but coming in and showing up at those training days and even just walking along in the field at a puppy level is also very important. It gets the puppies used to all these people around and them realizing, oh, well, these people don't matter. I'm just here to do, my job. Yeah, they might have a puppy moment and come be like, hey, what are you guys doing? But then they realize, oh, I just need to go do my business. And then that's even more important, the higher levels that you test, in utility or UPT, you have two gunners in the field along with a possible, 5 judges. There may be a photographer that's there. And so you just have more and more people, the higher level tests that you go, and it's getting that exposure for your dogs is very, very important to get them comfortable. But also it helps, it's a way for us to be like, hey, we need you out here. The more people, the better. But then you get some of these new people that have never walked a brace at a utility level and they see these dogs work and they're like, oh, wow, like my dog could maybe do that. And it's like, yeah. So it's,
it lights that fire.
Yeah, they're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, which is kind of how we ended up with Trigger is, Charles went out with a friend to pick up that you guys were training his dog, and you're like, well, they have short hairs, and Charles was like, oh, I've kind of thought about getting a dog. I'll drive out to Kansas with you. And then, Ethan put down some dogs, and Charles was like, he came home and said, so I put a deposit down on a puppy. I was like, oh, okay, glad we talked about that, but that's fine. But, so that's how that all started. He saw there's very few people that get to see the level of training that these dogs can do. And, while it's fun and great,
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then how it transfers into hunting. I mean, yes, there's plenty of people who run out of that don't hunt, but they still have well-trained dogs, and they have that obedience the higher level you get. But you don't have to necessarily hunt. But for those of us that do hunt with our dogs, it's been a major tool kind of in their development for hunting that has helped be, successful throughout the years of that training that we've kind of instilled through them throughout the years.
100%. It's very applicable, the obedience side of things, if nothing else. Like you said, if you're doing the NAVHDA stuff just to give your dog something to do and to train, you're getting them to that level of obedience that makes living with them, the livability side of things, just so much nicer. They're so much more handleable. But going back to training days, something that I want to touch on that you mentioned, you've got all these people out in the field following along, watching, observing. Training days and tests as well, they rely on their volunteers. You can't run a test with 2 people.
It's a volunteer organization, so
from the judges to the bird planters to the gunners to the test secretary, the field marshal, not just the people that are planting the birds, but catching those birds, going and picking up those birds. There are so so many roles to fill. Some of these tests provide meals and breakfasts and lunches, and do no-host dinners or hosted dinners. And there are so many places that volunteers are necessary, even at those training days. So if you're interested in watching how a test works, or watching dogs at a training day and bringing your puppy, and you join this chapter, don't just think that you should come work your dog and leave, because the people that helped you get your dog trained at that day also need the help getting their puppy trained. And I'm sure that Charles and you go to some of these training days and your dogs don't even get worked, probably, because you are just helping. And at the end of the day, you guys still feel like you were able to accomplish something. But there are times that your dogs get a back burner, and because people need to realize that it is a volunteer organization and it can't run without volunteers.
And I would go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I want to hear about all of the roles, the volunteer roles that you have fulfilled, because I know there's a lot, and I would probably miss them, even mentioning them, because I know field marshaling, I know test secretary, I know volunteer coordinator, and not just at the local level, but at the invitational as well. Those are, well, it fits your skill set very well. If you don't know Annie, and I know Annie very well, she is the most organized, almost to the level of OCD person that I have ever met. She has spreadsheets for everything. If you go to an event or a hunt test or hunting and you don't have something, she will probably have 3 of them extra just in case, because she doesn't want anyone to be without. So she is very good at these type of things. But what else have you done from a volunteering standpoint?
You kind of touched on it. So I've been a test secretary at both chapters. And typically at Heartland, it's been 1 test. They have 3 tests a year. One is the one in October is a 3-day that ends up usually being a double on Saturday, Sunday. And then I usually test secretary both tests at the Hawkeye chapter. So on the years that I've been both test secretary for Hawkeye and Heartland, I'm getting emails, calls, mail kind of constantly. So as Kat said, I'm very organized. So I have multiple spreadsheets and I got to keep all of that organized. And, you have lots of people that are reaching out to you. Do you have availability? And then you're verifying, well, are you wanting the Hawkeye test? Are you wanting the Heartland test? So it's managing that. And also as a test secretary, part of that role is, which I enjoy, is you have a lot of first-time handlers, whether people are just interested on their own or it was something that their breeder had asked them to do. So they have a ton of questions, and you're typically their first point of contact because they know they got to get into a test. So a lot of times you're helping calm those nerves, explaining, when your training days are, what you can do to help, what to expect on the day of the test, and then you come to the day of the test and you feel like these people in and out because you've had so many conversations, months leading up to the test. That you're able to talk to them, they're first-time handlers, we've all been there. I, shared my story and just trying to help talk them through and letting them know it's okay and letting them bounce things off of you if they have questions. So all of that kind of ties into the test secretary role. I've been thankful that since Charles is a judge in both chapters, he usually just gets all the judges for me, so I don't ever have to do that. So and it differentiates between chapters and chapters. Some chapters, the test secretary does it all. They do, they acquire all the judges. They work out all the travel plans for the judges, where they're staying, no host or host dinner. But then also part of it is we're the ones who are kind of printing out the scorecards that the judges are filling out. And anyone who's been a test secretary and the scorecards know that is, getting everything to line up is a giant pain. And thankfully, because of my OCD, I think I got it down to an art now. So kind of all of that just ties into your test secretary role,
you
right?
should
And
give
then
a class.
usually at training days,
you should give a class on test secretaries, because sometimes chapters have they're either new chapters, or it's somebody that's been involved in the chapter for a while that's taking on that new responsibility, and they're trying to figure out how to be a test secretary. And there's all the newbies that are trying to register, but then you got a newbie test secretary that's trying to get all their T's crossed and I's dotted. You should look into that.
I know. Well, if anyone that's, listening in, if they have any questions and they're in that role, feel free to reach out to me, because I can help walk you through it. It is a thankless job, and a lot of times we've been to enough tests that the judges recognize it. Like, we typically all have full-time jobs, but yet we're answering emails and calls and text messages for months, all hours of the day, to try to help folks get in these tests, let them know where they're at if they're on the waiting list, or give them directions to the test, and kind of all of that. So it's definitely, there's a lot of moving pieces to being a test secretary. So it is something I think that's underrated, but you learn a lot from it, and you get to know people, and you get to know about their dogs. So it's definitely something, if you have the organization skills and willingness to kind of talk to people, if you're at a chapter that is asking for volunteers to be a test secretary, I encourage you to sign up and do it. You learn a lot, even if it's just 1 year, and then you're like, no, I don't ever want to do that again. You learn a lot, and I think you have a lot more respect for all of things that are kind of involved on the back end of the test, because a lot of times people show up the day of test and everything's all perfect. They have their running order that your test secretary printed out. The judges have all the cards. They're telling you where you need to be when, and everything's laid out all perfectly. But it was a lot of work, the months leading up to the test on the test secretary's part, to make that run as smooth as possible.
Amen.
So,
because there are so many people wanting to get into tests, and there are those wait lists, and people contacting test secretaries at the last minute because they didn't know that they need to be registered for these tests months in advance to get a spot, and educating them. That, I feel, is if breeders are asking their puppy buyers to run in these tests, they need to be taking on that education role as well. And then test secretaries, if you volunteered for that, that's one of the things that you volunteered for, is helping these new handlers figure out what they need to do, what forms they need to fill out. They may not even have their puppy registered with NAVHDA to begin with, and you need to direct them how to get their puppy registered, and sending directions and letting them know what local hotels to look into. I mean, you're like a travel agent on top of an organizer. So it is a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Yeah. So, I've done that multiple years. This year, actually last year, Kat kind of touched base on it, but I've been the volunteer coordinator for the invitational level. So for those of you, that are aware or not aware, the invitational is, the highest level of testing in the NAVHDA system. So, with that, you have multiple judges, multiple days, multiple areas that need volunteers. It's the same thing. It's a volunteer organization, so we need people. And there's certain people that need to be in certain stations, throughout multiple points of the day. So I took that role on. I was asked if it would be something I was interested in, and I said, yeah, sure, why not? And of course, in 2020, due to COVID, it got, postponed until 2021. And then, so last year they decided to put essentially 2 years worth of invitational dogs in one invitational. So it was 7 days. So I had 7 days of volunteers I needed to fill in. And I think it ends up being, on the high end, I think it ends up being around 60 volunteers a day I, need to run the test. So you have your bird planters, you have bird cleaners, you have gunners in the field. Then you have people who are operating wingers, people who are, dragging ducks up a hill. You have people that are delivering lunches to the judges and the volunteers. You have people working the volunteer booth. I could go on and on. So I kind of took that on last year or the year before. So when I did that, I kind of had to back out of, one of my duties as a test secretary. I said, well, something has to give. Like, that's going to be a lot, especially with a 7-day invitational. So this year, I'm just the test secretary at Hawkeye, but I still am the volunteer coordinator for the invitational. So my plug here is, if anyone feels like traveling to New Mexico this year, it's just the normal 4-day invitational, and there's lots of, different opportunities to sign up and volunteer. All the job descriptions are online. You can sign up for whatever days. So if anyone that is out there is available, go check out the invitational kind of event on the NAVHDA.org website, and it'll give you some information in regards to that. So that's the main thing that takes up a lot of my time. It's another thing. It's a volunteer organization. We have monthly meetings. The committee has meetings to talk through everything. As we get closer to the invitational, it's working through new things. This year it's at a new location. It's not been in New Mexico this year. So there's been, additional meetings going over the grounds, because we've not, held the invitational there before. Everyone's been used to Ohio and Iowa. So now we're going to New Mexico. So it should be a good time there. I've also been the secretary for the Hawkeye chapter. So not just the test secretary, but the secretary there. So responsible for, meeting minutes, sending out emails to the members of the chapter, updating, Facebook posts, kind of all of that. There's a variety of different things that a secretary for a chapter level can do. And then kind of just, smaller scale would be kind of coordinating volunteers for day of tests kind of at both chapters I've been involved with. And then, showing up, and if we don't have enough people, I'm stepping in, being a field marshal. It's a pretty fun task to do. I'm pretty good at kind of telling people what to do. So whether that's good or bad, but I have no problem kind of pointing people in the direction they need to be at. So there's tons of opportunities to get involved in. And so I will say, being the more involved in NAVHDA that we are, we see more and more of the people that will show up to the training day. Like you said, they'll train their dog and then they will leave. Well, like you said, it's usually the people that are staying there all day long, which is typically us. We don't get to work our dogs until the very end, when it's probably the hottest, or we just decide we'll just train one day during the week and not do it. So we're not able to help put on the test without volunteers, and those people that are helping you during the training days and the tests, they need your help in return. Like I just encourage people to just ask to volunteer. I mean, there's been times, right in the beginning when we joined, some chapters, it was, everyone has different experiences with NAVHDA. So, we joined and it was like, well, they weren't maybe the friendliest, but at the same time, we were newbies and we didn't really offer to help because we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to expect, what to ask for. But, we started showing up every month, every training day, every test, and started, putting in the work. And then now, it's one of those deals at the chat, they knew, okay, well, these people are going to be around here.
They're committed.
And they're going to stick around and they're going to help, because a lot of chapters get burned on people showing up and just leaving and never really helping. So it's just, I encourage people, if you've had, more of a negative experience showing up to a training day and just felt like you weren't necessarily, welcomed. Every chapter's different. There's some, that have a very good system for when new people come. Others are just, they're busy taking care of everything. But I just continue trying, continue pushing, asking, what can I do? Do you want me to plant birds? Do you need me to go catch birds? Just ask to help wherever you can, as many times as you can. And trust me, people will start to take you up on your help, because usually it's the same core, 10, 15, if not less, people that are doing this hard work every day, every training day, every test day. So when we get new people in that are willing to, take on a new responsibility, there's sometimes where we don't have a job at a test, and I don't know what to do with myself, because I'm like, well, every job is taken. It's nice to be able to sit back and relax, because you have people that are able to step in and help do those duties that you have, on your list that need taken care of.
When you mentioned that you guys got started and you started going to training days and you didn't really know what to do, I think that is probably a big part of volunteers not knowing what to do is these newbies come and they don't even know that they should be volunteering. They're like, wow, this was awesome. Everything was set up for me. Everything was ready to go. Maybe this is how this works. And just educating people, whether that's educating them on how much work it takes to put on a training day and how much work it takes to put on a test, and saying, we would love if you would help with this part and then go work your puppy and then go work your utility dog. Or, hey, go work your utility dog in the field right now while it's still cool. But then when you're done, we'd love it if you could help with this. And just helping those new people realize that there's more roles for them that they could fill other than just coming and working their dog, I think is big. Education has always been something that we strive to do from our YouTube channel, our Patreon community. We want to help people learn, and that's something that you really love doing as well. And I think that people appreciate having that help of knowing what they need to do. And I would say people that come and run their puppy or run their utility dog and leave are shorting themselves on what they could truly learn. Because if you volunteer to gun, you're going to see so many things to learn from. Whether that's a dog making a mistake and how it was handled properly to correct that mistake, or a dog doing it right and getting the reward, as well as if you're not sure what happens at a utility test and you're helping drag ducks or you're helping at the duck search waters, you're going to see things that you wouldn't necessarily have seen had you bugged out after you ran your puppy through some of these puppy stuff. So you're going to learn so much, and not only from a testing standpoint, but as a continuation of your training. So when you go home and you may train by yourself the next weekend, you're going to know how to plant a bird. You're going to know how to keep those birds cool and healthy before it's a time to use them. You're going to know how to drag a duck. You're going to know how to do some of these things for yourself, which is going to be a huge part of preparing your dog on your own when you're not at a training day. So volunteering is so important from not only the chapter's standpoint of being able to continue putting on these training days and these tests, which are so shorthanded. Everyone is looking for a test to get their dog into, and it's almost impossible sometimes. You're like, I'm going to have to travel 12 hours to get my puppy into this test because everything else is full. Or you're not going to be able to get your dog into another utility test this year if they don't end up getting that prize one to qualify for the invitational, because there's just not enough tests. There's not enough volunteers, from judges to the people putting on the test. And so understanding that it takes a village. It takes a small nation to put on all of these NAVHDA tests, training days across the country to culminate for that yearly invitational that, like you said, it took like 60 volunteers a day, and it was a 7-day test. That's a lot of people that are taking time off from work, traveling multiple states away to get to these, that are expensing, these hotel stays or staying at, a campsite or something, and being available for multiple days away from their homes, their families, to be able to help put these things on. And so it's a great organization.
Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, takes a small village to put on these things. And, as a test secretary, when people call and they don't have the education maybe from their breeder, like, come January, February, you need to get your puppy in a test because the tests are going to fill up. They're calling in May or June to get their puppy in an August test, and I have to break it to them that we're full with 10 dogs on the waiting list. Some of these people, they just don't know, and they're like, well, can't you add another test? And it was like, well, if I had enough volunteers and enough judges who are also volunteering their time. So I definitely think the education piece around how much volunteering it takes and what it takes to put on these tests in itself is a huge piece that we really need, people at individual chapter levels to help those new people understand and to help them get involved. And we have people that, reach out that want to come to training days, and they're like, well, I don't really know if I want to test my dog, but I want to see what you do. And it's like, come to the training day. You don't have to test your dog, but you still can learn from the training and everything else that's going on and still have a well-mannered, obedient dog at home if you come and learn all these tools and all this, information that everyone has at these tests. So, it's just one other thing that I think as members of NAVHDA, we needed, do better of educating those newer folks and bringing them along for the ride and getting them, just as hooked as we all get, and getting them to volunteer for things and then, pass that on, and it's also, we have a lot of children that get involved at training days or even at tests, they'll come and they can't wait to help plant birds at training days. And, it's helping starting that next generation as well. And it's just something of getting all the people involved that you can. And that's what makes it such a fun organization to be part of.
100%. And that promotion, awareness, education for all of the upcoming generations, the people that are interested in becoming involved, even if they are just interested in getting their dog trained and not testing them, who knows? It might light a fire for them that they go from the NA test to the invitational. But those are the people that we need to grab hold of and hold on tight so that we can keep them for this organization that thrives off of people that are committed and want to volunteer and need that education. I know that NAVHDA has a booth at the Pheasant Fest, and you and Charles were both there every day with your dogs. We got to stop by and say hi and love on the dogs a few times as we were making our rounds from booth to booth that we had commitments to as well. But that's a great place to start the education process, because there's a lot of people that have not heard of NAVHDA, and I think that it's becoming more popular, maybe not quite a household organization name for dog people, but I think it's getting closer to that. And the more popular it becomes and the more well-known it becomes, the more demand there's going to be for people to want to run their dogs and get involved. And hopefully that means not only running their dogs, but volunteering and helping run these tests and training days so that more people can run their dogs. And it just snowballs so that we continue having people entering the apprentice program to continue becoming judges, because I became a judge at the same time Charles did, and I know he's much more involved in the judging, multiple tests, like probably to the point where Annie's like, you need to say no one of these weekends. And with the two little boys that we've got right now, I am taking a small step back where I'm saying I can only commit to a few tests a year, a couple spring tests, a couple fall tests. When people that are close to me, like Charles, says, hey, I could use a judge, I'm like, I'll figure out how to make it work if at all possible. Because right now I have to focus a little bit on that family first, but I want to still stay involved so that as they get older, and my 10-month-old probably isn't quite to the point of planting birds and running dogs yet, but my 3.5-year-old definitely loves throwing a pigeon, I'll tell you that. But then getting them involved and having us be able to go to a few more of these training days. I know Desiree had little Weller at a training day just recently too. So, and he's 3 months old, right? He's baby.
Yeah, because we had him. He was at the booth at Pheasant Fest as well. So we did get a wide variety of people when we had Weller in his car seat up on the table, and then Timber next to so you have a baby and a puppy. So we had a bunch of people come over to see what was up. But yeah, she had him. It was his first training day. Had the stroller ready to go. Had his earmuffs all ready, and when she was out there in the field, maybe I think she was running Siggy. Another chapter member just pushed the stroller along, and he just came along. He's going to be one that, there's plenty of women involved in NAVHDA that are toting their kids around, getting their kids involved, and Desiree is definitely going to be one of those. So Weller was going to be at multiple NAVHDA events throughout his whole entire life, and he started at a very young age. So
that's right. So if you could tell anyone that's interested in joining NAVHDA or running their dog at a NAVHDA event, what would you give them for advice? What is that one piece of advice that you could give them to help them and educate them?
I think the biggest thing is, even before, if you have the glimmer in your eye, you're like, I think I want to get a puppy and maybe I'm interested in NAVHDA, is the first thing is go to a test. Go see what the test is about. And like we said, a lot of times you can walk with, if given permission from the judges, but then you can see all that high level training, or even just the puppy stuff. You can start there. Going to a test really kind of opens your eyes of, oh wow, and like you kind of get to talking to people, and you have your first time handlers that are there, but then you have your people who have run multiple dogs. So that's kind of the first step, and then you get an idea of, well, okay, well, this is what it's about. And then it would be just finding a chapter that's close to you and getting involved in those training days. I mean, that is the most important thing. I touched on a little bit with Trigger. Her first test, we weren't involved in a chapter because we didn't know anything about it. And then after her test, and we decided we wanted to rerun her, that's when we started getting involved in chapters and going to their training days, and then realized all the tools and resources. And it was actually before Triggers, I think it was her first test. We didn't go into any training days. It was, I think, 2 weeks before her test. We were visiting family in Missouri, and there was a test there, and we actually went to that test. And the judges agreed. Charles was like, well, would you mind like walking in the field with me after the test? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. So after the test, these judges who had judged all day Saturday, all day Sunday in the summer, offered to walk with us with Trigger in the field just to see, because we had no idea what we were doing, and gave us some ideas and pointers on what to do. So it's, not only do you have the resources of chapter members, but if you're going to these tests and you're getting involved, talking to the judges afterwards that's almost invaluable as well. They're full of a wealth of knowledge that can help. So, to this day, we couldn't thank those judges that walked with us after their whole weekend of judging. We had some newbies show up, and they're like, yeah, okay, I guess we'll walk with you in the field. And, they were able to help us. And then, we kind of went from there. So that would be my biggest pointer, is go to a test. And then after that, start getting involved in the training days.
Definitely. The more educated you can be and prepared that you can be of knowing what to even expect is going to give you a leg up, going to give your puppy a leg up. And I would say no question is a dumb question. We've all had them. We've all said and asked dumb things, and people have humored us. And to keep in mind, this is a volunteer organization. So the people there aren't getting paid to answer your dumb questions. They want to be there to answer your dumb questions because they've had them before. And they don't think they're dumb questions. And, I'm not going to say that every single person in NAVHDA is a 100% positive, friendly person, because you can't make that generalization. It's a big world, but I would say that the vast majority of people that are at these NAVHDA events, training days, tests, are people that want to help. They want to educate. They've been a newbie before, and they know the struggle to figure it out. And the more resources that we can offer the upcoming generations, the people just getting involved, even the late life onset people that, might be in their late 40s getting their first bird dog because now they've got time, now they've got money that they want to spend on something that's interesting to them, giving them the opportunity to figure it out as well. And that's what made me want to become a NAVHDA judge, is helping more people and having a better understanding of what the tests actually are, so that I can help train our dogs, clients' dogs, and people to better be prepared for those tests. I think is the biggest thing, is to educate yourself and prepare yourself as much as possible, and utilize the resources that are out there from those training days, from tests, from the wealth of knowledge that's available through YouTube videos, through these different online training academies to get your dogs ready, Patreon, some of these breeders, we have a Patreon account that we will help you train your puppy in preparation for that from home. These are all resources that all of them weren't available 10 years ago. And the more that we can continue helping people, and Annie putting on a test secretary clinic is on the radar, I guess, is the thing that we need to do.
In all this spare time I have.
Yep. Well, we'll have Charles help you put that together, because he's pretty creative when it comes to stuff like that too. So,
well, this is true.
So since I've already told everyone where I see yourself in the future for NAVHDA, putting on these test secretary clinics, where do you see yourself in the future of NAVHDA?
Well, the baby step for me is, I've just typically helped train and, test dogs in natural ability. So our youngest dog, Tipsy, Charles will refer to her as she's 100% my dog. We were solid on 5 dogs, and then we saw Tipsy, and it was one of those like, well, I kind of really want her. And he's like, well, if you want her, you have to train and test her. So I'm now dabbling in to 100%, training Tipsy for utility level. So it's on the flip side of it. So I've helped train utility dogs plenty of times with our own dogs, with friends' dogs, been there doing all of that. But now I'm on the front line there. So the future for me is probably getting through utility testing Tipsy. The main goal I have, we went over goals at the Heartland annual meeting, and my main goal I called out for the year was this exact thing of getting Tipsy through utility, all while probably not murdering Charles as we train together. So I know that you are very familiar, and Charles and I have been parts of lots of heated discussions while training. Training with your significant other has many challenges.
Especially when you're very passionate about training and about dogs and competitive and you care an awful lot. It makes it all that much more on the line, valuable. And yes, being told you're doing something wrong, even if you are, is not always easy to hear. And Ethan and I have definitely had both of those conversations before.
Yep, I've been there for a few of them for you guys. So, but yeah, so that's my number one kind of immediate future goal. In the future, whether it's getting more involved at a chapter level, or continuing on my volunteer coordinator through the international level. I have a pretty good insight of things that are going on, and I truly love the organization. So if an opportunity arises to get me involved even more, I'm not opposed to it. So it's just, keeping, I try to keep everything as even keeled as possible. And I often tell people that my life is somewhat organized chaos. So while it seems like I got everything together, it is because it's on a spreadsheet, but my brain is probably going, 700 miles an hour. But, I just continue to do whatever I can for the organization, and that involvement and getting people involved and volunteer and educate people, and wherever that takes me within the organization, I'm here for it. Like we said from the beginning, we're all in. So that's where we're at.
Well, Annie, I think that you're going to do great with Tipsy. And hopefully you don't kill Charles in the making of that. Speaking of Charles, there he is, video bombing in the background. But thank you so much for being on the show with me today. It was awesome to get to chat with you about your experiences with NAVHDA. Hopefully this has helped educate some people about becoming more involved in NAVHDA, from the volunteering standpoint to running their dog if they're interested or questioning that. I can't wait for us to actually get together again, not just via a podcast, because it was fun to see you at Pheasant Fest, but it was very, very busy. So again, thanks for being on here with me tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And again, where can people find you when they need to reach out about, test secretarying and puppies and things like that?
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook at Honor Point Kennels. And then we also have an Instagram, which is honor_point_kennels. We typically have some pretty just, real deal. These are our dogs being silly, laying on the couch, type stories up or posts up right now. We have, Arrows due here on April 8th with puppies, and she's huge. So if you need something to make your day feel better, there's going to be tons of puppy pictures here coming up shortly. So, but you can get a hold of us, there. If you see us at a training day, at a test, if Charles is judging, feel free to come say hi, ask us any questions you have. You can shoot me a message on Facebook as well if you have anything, additional questions around NAVHDA or getting involved. I would love to help, educate and let you know any information that you need to know.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for listening in. Hopefully you found this information really valuable. Again, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you don't already, check out our YouTube channel with tons of dog training videos to help you get prepared for NAVHDA if you need to, as well as our dedicated YouTube channel for these podcasts. If you need additional help getting your puppy ready or have more of those questions, like Annie said, about what it takes to get involved in NAVHDA or just get your dog ready for hunting or obedience around the house, we do have an online dog training community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels. And if you need help getting items to train your dog because your chapter doesn't have everything you need, or you need some stuff to work with your dog, not just at those training days, check out our online dog training supply store at standingstonesupply.com. And until next time, I will see you in the next video, and I'm Kat the dog trainer.